Good morning, everyone. We have breaking news straight out of the gates this morning. Border Czar Tom Homan just wrapping up his first news conference in Minneapolis after replacing Greg Bovino as the lead of ICE operations in the city. Homan arrived Monday evening to Minneapolis after a phone call with President Trump that morning. He says he's staying until the problem is gone and that a lot of progress has been made in the last 3 days. 10 million illegal aliens entered the U.S. under Biden. 2 million gotaways. Homan says ICE is getting them off the streets.
I want to be clear. I don't read a lot of social media. I don't read a lot of media. I don't believe half what I see. We are not surrendering the president's mission in immigration enforcement. Let's make that clear. Prioritization of criminal aliens doesn't mean that we forget about everybody else. That's just simply ridiculous. But when you have a criminal standing here and a non-criminal standing there, that criminal always should be targeted first because he's a significant concern to the safety and security of the community.
Homan says he has met with Waltz, Ellison, and Fry while in Minnesota. To the agitators, he says, he wants to make it clear ICE and CBP are professionally doing their jobs, that they are sworn law enforcement officers protecting the interest of our country. Homan says they will continue to run targeted raids, emphasizing targeted, strategic enforcement operations. It will continue to happen with a target of getting public safety threats out of the neighborhoods. So with that said, Homan promises that ICE will remain in Minneapolis getting illegal criminals off the streets. Also breaking this morning, federal agents have raided the Fulton County, Georgia Elections Hub and Operations Center. A warrant was served yesterday afternoon, signed by a federal magistrate judge, authorizing the seizure of records and materials related to the 2020 presidential election. LINDELLTV reporter Heather Mullins has been following this from the very beginning years ago. Heather, thanks for joining us this morning. What are you hearing from the ground there?
Well, Vanessa, thank you for having me. It's truly an honor to be able to even speak about this story today because, as you mentioned, I have been following this from the very beginning. From the immediate week after the 2020 election in Georgia, I was at the State Farm Arena when they were recounting and just documenting everything for about the next 4 or 5 years now. And so this, for me and for a lot of people that have been working on election integrity in Georgia, was a long time coming. There's a group called Voter GA that originally had a bunch of people come forward with affidavits, election workers, all kinds of stuff, and they filed a lawsuit to unseal the ballots in Fulton County. That lawsuit dragged on for years. A judge did end up unsealing the ballots in Fulton County. Specifically, at the phase they were at was he ordered Fulton County to rescan the ballots and present the Voter GA with high resolution ballot images for their audit team to look over. Fulton County, once those ballots were unsealed, actually hired one of Georgia's top 10 criminal defense lawyers, a man by the name of Don Samuel, to try to represent them in that case. Fast forward to today, you now have the FBI under the Trump administration. They obtained a warrant to obtain the very ballots, documents, and ballot envelopes that Fulton County has been refusing to hand over for years now. So this is a long time coming. Fulton County from the very get-go has been stonewalling any attempts to actually access these ballots and audit these ballots. I believe we have a soundbite from one of the Georgia State Election Board members, Dr. Jan Johnston. She was on the ground there last night and details what was happening. So take a listen.
We're here at the Fulton County Election Warehouse, also known as the Hub. We were informed today that the FBI has come with a warrant to obtain the election documents and ballots and ballot envelopes. Unfortunately, anyone that works at the Fulton County Warehouse has not allowed entry by the State Election Board member, or Ms. Grubbs, a State Election Board member, or Ms. Gazal, State Election Board member. However, they are welcoming and opening the door for the county commissioners and the chair of the Fulton County Board of Elections. However, the vice chair of the State Board of Elections has not been allowed to enter the building and observe.
What do you think they are here for?
What, the FBI?
Yeah, have you seen the reports? The warrant?
I have not seen the warrant. My understanding is that they've served a warrant to obtain the ballots and envelopes and other election materials, but I have not seen the warrant.
And this is all pertaining to 2020?
These are pertaining to the election documents from the 2020 election. They were also subpoenaed by the State Election Board, and we have yet to be able to obtain these documents. So we are delighted to see the presence of the FBI and their efforts to obtain these documents to win the 2020 election.
It's been a long time coming.
It has been.
So as you see there, Vanessa, you had the State Election Board subpoena these records. You had voter GA have a judge order the unsealing of these records. And you had the Trump administration's DOJ trying to access these records. And all the while, Fulton County was refusing to hand them over. But now they got that warrant. So they have whatever records were in that warehouse.
Yeah, we're talking about physical ballots from the 2020 general election in Fulton County. That includes in-person, absentee, other ballots as well, tabulator tapes from every voting machine used in the county, balloting images, voter rolls. So things like that have been taken from this hub. But you know, in my mind, Heather, I start thinking about they've had plenty of time, and I hope that it's just, you know, an intuition that's not coming true for me. But that's plenty of time to tamper with, get rid of, destroy, delete, throw away, anything they need to do to hide anything that could have been tampered with during the 2020 election. Does that concern you as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, I can almost guarantee that of the ballots, like I'm told it was 700 plus boxes that they loaded up into 3 different moving trucks. But I can guarantee you they're not going to find like everything they're looking for, because Fulton County, back when this first happened, there was actually a whole scandal involving shredding trucks that were sent to the old warehouse that Fulton County used to store the ballots. There was an incident where the alarm had gone off and somebody had tripped the alarm. A door was left wide open. Like, it was this whole thing. I ended up on the ground there. There was like a sheriff, you know, that said, you know, no ballots were taken. This room was locked. And, you know, I guess we take everybody at their word because so many officers in Georgia are compromised as well. I mean, this is something I've been investigating for 5 years now. And one of the things that originally happened when President Trump had retweeted some of my work there, I actually had law enforcement officers. I had like everybody that knew anything reaching out to me with information, because the actual government there in Georgia was so corrupt that if you tried to report things that were happening, it like fell on deaf ears with Brad Raffensperger, Gabriel Sterling, Brian Kemp, like none of them did anything to look into this stuff. In fact, Brad Raffensperger wrote a letter to Congress on January 6th saying his whole team investigated everything in Fulton County and they found nothing. The election was great. Everything was perfect. And now today we're seeing the election hub in Fulton County surrounded by crime scene tape. This is a long time coming, and a lot of people in Georgia have a lot of explaining to do going forward. But I am confident, even though I do anticipate them to be missing key information. These are sloppy criminals, as I've uncovered over the years. So I do anticipate they're going to leave some incriminating stuff behind, Vanessa.
I believe that as well. And, you know, former state representative there, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she put out a statement, Heather, last night and then another one this morning because she's been following this as well. She says Fulton County isn't the only county where election fraud took place. In her post, she says it's just the biggest. And so Fulton County, as you know, you've been on the ground there for 5 years and covering this extensively. That is a big scandal. And we hope to get some answers from that very soon. But it has to be good for people like you who have been there fighting, and you know you have been screaming out that something isn't right with the 2020 election, and it fell upon deaf ears, like you just mentioned. But now we're finally seeing some headway.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've the only way I can explain it, Vanessa, is it felt like Georgia was run by the mob. It was like organized crime when it came to these elections. And so to see the good patriotic people like Dr. Jan Johnston, the state election board member, she's been fighting really hard on that state election board. There's also other members of the Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections fighting those battles. But it's just been a long time coming. I'm grateful to President Trump that he never gave up this investigation. And, you know, I think we do have a soundbite from Fulton County Chairman Rob Pitts, who is one of the people that has been covering up everything going on there. In fact, he gave Fulton County's handling of the 2020 election an A+ rating and gave comments last night from behind crime scene tape on his thoughts about what happened. So take a listen.
Now they have been removed from this facility, out of our control. We don't know where they're being taken. We don't know what's going to happen to them. So we can no longer, and I can no longer, as chair of this board, satisfy not only the citizens of Atlanta, but the citizens of the world that those ballots are still secure. So that is a major concern that I have right now. Again, my point is, once they were here, as long as they were here in control of Fulton County, I was confident that they were safe and secure. And the other point I'd like to make, this goes back to the 2020 elections. For the life of me, I still cannot understand the fascination about the 2020 elections, which occurred 6 years ago. That election is over with. That election has been reviewed, it's been audited, and in every case, every instance, we get a clean bill of health. If there's anybody who knows what happened in 2020 on that night at State Farm Arena, it was Fulton County Commission Chairman Rob Pitts. I was there. So the fascination with this, I still don't understand it, but we'll have more to say later.
I just want to say that Fulton County Department of Registration and Elections is always and will continue to maintain fair, transparent, and accurate elections. And we will continue to do the work of the electorate here in Fulton County. The FBI is still in the building. We have fully complied. We will always comply with law enforcement and with the rule of law. And that's what we do here in Fulton County. And that's all I have to say.
Mr. Pitts.
How concerned are you, sir? How concerned are you?
So, I mean, Vanessa, there you have it, right? There's this guy, Chairman Rob Pitts, saying, oh, the ballots were so safe when they were here under Fulton County's control. But I was literally there on the ground at their old warehouse years ago when those ballots were supposed to have been observed 24/7 and the alarms went off and somebody had breached the building. So it's sort of like I've witnessed firsthand the lies coming out of people like Chairman Rob Pitts' mouth over the years. And it's just like, you can't make this stuff up anymore. But again, so grateful that we're even covering this story today and that President Trump never took his foot off the gas and is going to make sure the American people get answers.
You're absolutely right. We've been wanting answers. We knew all along that something smelled fishy with this situation. And I do want to make mention, too, that Tulsi Gabbard was on the ground last night as well. She didn't give a statement, but she was there during the raid. So good work to you, Heather. Continue to update us on what's going on there in Fulton County. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
And meanwhile, there's a push on Capitol Hill to pass the SAVE Act, protecting our elections. The SAVE Act would require IDs to vote and remove illegals from voter rolls. Seems like common sense, right? Well, the SAVE Act was passed by the House last April, but right now it's being held up in the Senate. Our Allison Steinberg asked Senator Thune.
President Trump has repeatedly urged the passing of the SAVE Act, as well as many MAGA Republicans. What is the holdup in the Senate? Why hasn't that been brought to the floor for a vote? And what's your stance on requiring proof of citizenship to vote in elections?
Well, I'm for that. I've co-sponsored the SAVE Act in the past. I think my understanding is that they are still modifying the bill. It includes right now a requirement that you be a citizen to register to vote, but it doesn't include a requirement that to vote you be a resident. So in other words, if you're going to have what we call voter ID or photo ID when somebody goes into the ballot box to vote, that's not currently covered in the bill. So that's being fixed and addressed, and I think the new bill that comes out hopefully will deal with that. But I mean, at some point we'll have that vote. I'm for it. I think most of our colleagues in the Senate are, and I don't, it hasn't had consideration in the relevant committee yet, but I know there's a high level of interest among our members in getting a vote on SAVE Act.
Well, it hasn't been brought up for a vote in the Senate nearly a year after the House passage. Allison also asked Senator Rick Scott about it.
Senator, you recently urged the passage of the SAVE Act. Do you have any insight as to what the holdup is in the Senate? Why is Thune not bringing this to the floor?
We got to get it. We got to get a vote on it. Whether we do have to do it through a standing filibuster, it needs to get passed. Illegal. Somebody here illegal does not have a right to register to vote in our country and does not have a right to vote in our election.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's true, but the Senate needs to act fast before the midterms. So all eyes are on the Senate to get this done. We'll keep you posted. Allison is there every day asking questions, trying to get answers. Also on Capitol Hill, Secretary of State Marco Rubio testified before the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee, where he spoke at length about U.S. policy toward Venezuela and national security issues. But not before a protester kicked things off.
All right, here we go. Suspend. You know the drill. Off to jail.
That's a war crime.
That's a one-year ban from the committee. Anyone who is a persistent violator will be banned for 3 years. So don't know whether the guy falls in that category. Looks like it. I hope after 3 years he'll find a more productive means of employment. Secretary Rubio, we have 2 hearings a week. You seem to have a more robust following than most of our witnesses that come before us. But anyway,
there'll be a couple more. So thank you for stopping the clock. But I appreciate it. So,
well, Rubio came with his dukes out, not taking any bull, clearing the record, setting it straight, and providing facts. There were some hot takeaways. Watch.
The president already said that he was ready to put American troops in Venezuela again. So we're at war right now. So if things don't go well with the Chavistas you've empowered,
when did the president say he was going to put troops in Venezuela?
A military option, what is your criteria for returning to a military option and putting boots on?
Well, I don't recall the president saying he was going to put troops in Venezuela. Where did he say that?
I'm asking you, what are your...
But that's what you said. I didn't remember the president
has already said that he was ready to put American troops in Venezuela.
No, I think the president has said that he retains the right as commander-in-chief to protect the United States against any imminent threats. Maybe that involves troops, maybe that involves air power. We hope, but we don't anticipate that being the case in Venezuela.
I worry that you are playing fast and loose with our nation's
Well, I just gave you testimony here.
I just want to conclude by saying...
Yeah, but I just gave you testimony of how well things are moving forward, not as fast as everybody would like.
Yeah, but you also said that in 6 or 9 months, if things don't go well, you're going to have to do something else. And the president's already said that he's not ruled out the military option. And you've also just said that, yes, we are at war. The president has wartime powers.
But every president retains the power to use military to protect.
So it's reasonable for me to ask you...
And I gave you a very specific example. Every president retains the right to defend the United States against an imminent threat. Yes, if there are Iranian, just give you an example, Iranian...
have been described as managing the president's Gaza plan. Meanwhile, Ambassador Barrack is leading on Syria policy, while Special Envoy Boulos is appearing to lead on our Africa policy. So I have to ask you, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you, are you the lead for U.S. government on foreign policy?
No, the lead on U.S. foreign policy is named Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States. On the individuals you've described, these are very valuable teams. We have if I can answer, because I think it's important. It's a legitimate question. I have the distinction, but I think both the benefit of being the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of State. As National Security Advisor, my job is to coordinate the interagency function of national security, and that involves foreign policy. So I speak to Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner in the case of Gaza and now Russia, probably 10 times a day. We have multiple meetings and coordination. All of it is we build a team, we gather facts, we present options, and then we take them to the president that were taken or lost and engage themselves in both civic and economic life. But again, I remind everybody, on Friday will mark the 4 weeks since this happened. I get it. We all want like something immediately, but this is not a frozen dinner you put in a microwave and in 2.5 minutes it comes out ready to eat. And these are complex things, and we've seen this play out. I've used the example of Paraguay and Spain. There are others where there's a transition from autocracy to democracy. It's not linear. It's, in some cases, there are ups and downs along the way, but it's trending in the right direction so far, with a recognition that more work needs to be done.
Thanks for your hard work.
Senator Booker.
I just want to start by saying what's plain, frankly, be plain to Senator Rubio and plain to members here, is that it should not.
You talked about the speech in Davos. Here's something the president said in Davos. I'm helping NATO until the last few days. When I told them about Iceland, they loved me. They're not here for us on Iceland, that I can tell you. Our stock market took the first dip yesterday because of Iceland, so Iceland has already cost us a lot of money. The president repeatedly mistook Iceland for Greenland, right? We're not mad at Iceland. They haven't cost us any money. The president just mistook the two countries for each other, correct?
Yeah, he meant to say Greenland, but I think we're all familiar with presidents that have verbal stumbles. We've had presidents like that before. Some made a lot more than this one.
Nice try. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. I thought he did well.
Yeah, we remember Stumbleina right before President Trump's term. Well, the hearing highlighted sharp divisions on Capitol Hill over America's role overseas and comes as foreign policy continues to be a central issue heading into a critical midterm election year. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But also on the Hill yesterday was Kid Rock, testifying before the Senate Commerce Committee focused on the live entertainment ticketing industry and high concert ticket prices.
As an artist, what does this do for the American people?
It should stop them from getting ripped off and hopefully make America fun again so they can go out and attend some sporting events or big concerts at the prices that us, the artists, set, and not the secondary market and the brokers and the bots and the bad actors.
Is this the most outrageous you've ever seen ticket prices?
They've been getting more outrageous every year for 30 years.
Can President Trump run for a third term?
Why not?
Can we get a quick one together?
Kid.
Why not? I like the sound of another term as well. Kid Rock believes ticket prices for concerts are unfair and that there are automated bots that buy up tickets, driving prices up for fans. And that's why he was there today trying to fix that problem. Now to President Trump's power moves over China, a game of chess with a complex mix of competition. Let's bring in foreign policy expert Sierra Claire. Hi, Sierra. Good morning to you. The U.S. recently unveiled a new national defense strategy that aims to counter China's influence. What can you tell us about that?
Well, Vanessa, exactly what you said. This national security strategy was actually released back in December, and then they built on it with the Pentagon releasing their defense strategy. And both of these documents mention China, practically on page 1. And so that's just such a shift from what we saw in the Biden years. And really taking this threat from China seriously, which is great to see, because there's just so much that needs to be done.
Yeah, and there needs to be a lot done, like you just mentioned, but we have to do it without overly provoking conflict. How does President Trump do that? How does he show strength from the U.S. without provoking any conflict with China?
Well, exactly, Vanessa. And I think that's such a mistake that people make that, China's mentioned in these documents. And President Trump mentions China often. You know, he was tweeting about it in regard to a trade deal with Canada, different things like that. And they take that as, you know, an aggression, or that he is trying to start something. And what you actually have to go back and look at is that China was winning. China was encroaching in Venezuela. China was encroaching here in the U.S., in China, in Canada, you know, Western Hemisphere. And so now that Trump is pushing back on that, and all he's doing is just pushing back and saying, hey, you know, we're America. We want to have fair trade relationships. We want to have, for national security reasons, we want to have our protected supply chains for critical industries, all of these things that he's doing. And China is, you know, being aggressive back on that. And because they're, you know, now they're dealing with somebody who's actually strong. And people are taking that and saying he started it. Actually, no, China was winning, so you didn't hear about it in the news. But now you do hear about it because China is pushing back. But everything that President Trump is doing is just all about keeping America safe and, you know, kind of reasserting American sovereignty in many cases. And I don't think that that is aggressive. And I think it's actually a very smart strategy in terms of not provoking China and always having that to fall back on and say, hey, this is about American sovereignty, national security, protecting supply chains, protecting borders. And China can't really, you know, it would be very strange for them to actually go and do a military aggression based on President Trump just trying to protect American sovereignty.
And the U.S., you mentioned this just briefly, the U.S. continues tariffs, export controls, sanctions, targeting Chinese companies over, you know, security, technology, illegal activities, a source of ongoing economic strain. What can you tell us about that?
Well, these economic tactics, this is economic warfare that China wages on many places, not just America, through IP theft, through unfair trade practices, through shadow networks, you know, buying things off market, critical things like oil, for example. And so this is all economic warfare. And what President Trump is doing is he is fighting back, and he is, as you said, he's protecting technology. He's positioning America to be ahead in all of these industries. Critically to that is the energy dominance initiative that he's doing, American energy dominance. And that is a domino effect, because when we control energy, we can be ahead in so many other industries as well. And the tariffs and the trade deals that he's making, these are all things that are, number one, protecting American supply chains and positioning us to be ahead in these critical industries for the future. But they are also giving options and building relationships to places where China was deeply embedded and conducting this economic warfare and taking advantage of these countries in very unfair ways. So it's actually really important for the United States to engage broadly with all of these trade deals that President Trump is doing.
And you wrote about the latest with China on your Substack. Take us there and where people can find that article.
Yeah, so it's actually published in townhall.com this morning, and it's also on my Substack, sierranock.substack.com. And I basically was just covering, you know, there's some latest drama going on within the Chinese government. Xi has done some purges, and it's very unstable right now. And I was directing people's attention to all of the things that China has done within the United States, their networks that they've done within the United States, that are some really critical national security issues. And I think now is a great time to address those while Xi is busy with whatever his political drama is at home.
And we also have that article on LINDELLTV.com as well for people to read Sierra's latest take on what's going on with China. While I have you, we have a couple of seconds left here, Sierra. There's some movement going on with Iran. I know you're following that closely as well. What can you tell us the latest there?
Well, according to my sources on the ground, some really powerful messages coming out of Iran that they are still waiting for support coming from the United States. And we don't know what that support might look like. But I think the message is that the Iranian people are still ready to continue the revolution. They're ready for this regime to change. They are done with this regime, and anything that the United States does moving forward, which I do expect there to be escalation there with those tensions and the naval U.S. Navy presence that President Trump has sent there, that's just going to encourage them and bolster their movement. And they're really the ones who are leading this. But the U.S. can certainly help out. And President Trump is currently weighing those options.
Yep, we'll continue to watch Iran as well. I want everyone to follow Sierra on Substack and also, again, read her latest article there and on LINDELLTV.com. Sierra, always a pleasure to have you. Thanks for the updates.
Thank you, Vanessa.
And in Nigeria, we've been following the massacre of Christians there. It's just heartbreaking. Nigeria leads the world in Christian killings. Founder of TruthNigeria.com, Judd Saul, he's here with us this morning. Judd, thanks so much for coming on and raising awareness about the terrible acts of crimes against Christians going on in Nigeria. You've had an eyewitness account as a missionary on the ground there since 2011. Tell us about the carnage you're seeing.
Oh, it's just absolutely devastating. In fact, I just returned from Nigeria yesterday, and the killing still continues to happen. Even while we were there, there were killings going on in several areas, and the Nigerian government response is nothing. The Nigerian government is doing absolutely nothing to protect Christians and the innocent civilians that are being killed by Muslim terrorists.
It's just so heartbreaking. And, here at home, the mainstream media is not covering this. They're not talking about this. We cover it often, Judd, that it's happening there. It's happening here. It's happening all over the world. We've seen attacks on our Christians here in America as well. But staying with what's happening in Nigeria, I want to take people to your website and some of these articles. These women are being held hostage. This one right here on your homepage I'm bringing up right now, a militia holds 1,400 hostages. 1,400 hostages. And you can read the full article on this website, TruthNigeria.com. Let's talk about this story in particular, where these people were kidnapped.
So one of the things that people aren't talking about besides the killings is the mass kidnapping of Christians throughout the middle belt of Nigeria. And this is just one example. We know that in southern Kaduna, where many kidnappings have happened. In fact, just 160 people were kidnapped in one setting just 2 weeks ago. And the local Nigerian government denied that a kidnapping even took place. The local police official said it was just a hoax. Well, we sent our journalists into the area and found eyewitnesses, people that actually escaped the attack, that were saying this is who was kidnapped. Here's the list of names. And this is where the kidnappers took them to. And for 2 days, local government officials laid cover for the kidnappers as 160 people were transported into the camps we're talking about. And the thing is that this is just one camp. We know there are thousands more Christians in different camps throughout the Middle Belt that are being held hostage. And the thing is, the Nigerian government knows where these camps are. Our organization knows where these camps are. And there is no willpower by the Nigerian government to free these people. And these poor women, this is women, children, elderly, they're being beaten, they're being starved, they're being tortured. And if the families don't pay up the ransom, a lot of times they get executed. But even if the families do end up paying a ransom, they still execute the hostages. And this is another form of terror that the Fulani ethnic militia, specifically an Islamist militarized group in Nigeria, are perpetuating this terror and violence on Christians.
It's just awful. And, you mentioned the children as well, the younger girls. There's another article on your website talking about these underage Christian girls who are being taken hostage. They're abducted. They're forced into marriages.
Yes.
children are held near and dear to my heart. And, you know, you don't want to see anything like this happen to anyone, but they're attacking the children as well.
They don't discriminate. They're going at it is terror to any way they can do it. And they kidnap these young Christian girls. They turn them into baby making factories, and they send them up and they have them marry terrorists. And these terrorists have multiple wives, and they don't have a good life. They're beaten and tortured, and just having as many babies as possible is another way of terror. And I met with a kidnapped survivor just 3 days ago in Nigeria, and the stories that she was saying about what happened to her are just completely awful. And I can't even go into detail about how bad she was treated in these camps. But the world is silent, and the Nigerian government is complicit. And I am begging for better and more U.S. intervention in Nigeria.
President Trump has made it clear that he's very aware of what's going on in Nigeria. What do you want to see done? What is your fight from the U.S.? How can the U.S. help?
We need to set an operating directive into identifying who the terrorists actually are. We need to have the U.S. government put together an operating directive focusing on the Fulani ethnic militia, which is responsible for the lion's share of the killing and kidnapping in Nigeria. And we also we need to come alongside local village security teams. And we need to pressure the Nigerian government to allow locals to be able to protect themselves against these terrorists.
Are you seeing that people are scared to, obviously they are, go to church there? They're scared to even say that they're Christian. Are they targeting neighborhoods as well where Christians live? Like, take us to the ground there. What is the everyday life like for these Christians? I mean, they can't, you know, we're used to going to work every day, Judd, and going home and taking care of our families, going to baseball games, football games, dance practice. You know, people think, the left thinks this country is so terrible until you hear stories like this. This is why people are fleeing these countries and trying to come to America to live a better life. And so, again, I'm so glad you're coming on and telling us about these firsthand accounts that you're witnessing there, because this is the reality of what's going on in other countries. But tell us what it's like there. What is the atmosphere like? There has to be just a constant fear of worry.
It is. People, when they leave their home to go to their farm, they don't know if they're going to make it back or not. They're farming in fear. They're going to work in fear, and they're going to church in fear. And they have been conditioned to live life that way.
It eliminates dust, mold, viruses, and odors.